Hey there, and welcome to Ask Daniel number 21, in which we will go over 3 emails and I think maybe 2 comments. There is a question that came in via Instagram and one in Twitter as well. And before we start, first of all, my general disclaimer: nothing is medical advice, just general thoughts and comments that I hope will be helpful to anyone that's tuning in. That I want to add one thing more before we go to the question, which is something I literally like 30 minutes ago thought about. I was driving, picking up my kids from someplace, and this is what I was thinking. You know, insomnia really happens when your brain kind of gets, that part of your brain that wants to keep you safe gets kind of focused on sleeplessness and looks at sleeplessness as a threat and wants to keep you safe from that, right? And you know, Nick Wignall, one of the guests here, talked a lot about how you have to kind of be willing to have insomnia to get past it long term. Like if you're really just trying to keep yourself completely safe from it, if you don't want to face it, et cetera, you're teaching the brain that it is dangerous, that it is supposed to kind of try to avoid insomnia, etc. He actually used the example of anxiety, but it applies to insomnia too. So anyway, my realization in the car was that not only is patience a good thing when you're kind of working on your insomnia, being willing to learn things and unlearn things also important, but courage. Courage is really important. You have to be brave. You have to do things that your brain is telling you, like, that's crazy. Spending less time in bed, that's crazy. You can't do that. You have to keep yourself safe. You have to do more things to sleep more, etc. You have to get past insomnia, you have to do kind of the opposite of what that part of your brain is telling you to do. That kind of, threat monitoring system is telling you, like, insomnia is really dangerous. You have to do something. You have to be brave enough to do kind of the opposite, to teach your brain that sleeplessness is not a threat. It is not a threat. And once if you're brave enough to go down that path, you will get past insomnia. So that was my little insight today, and there'll be definitely more on that. But anyway, that said, let us jump right into the questions here, and we will start looking at emails. And let's start here with an email from Lena. And let's make sure I get the right one. Here it is. 3 days ago. And here is what Lena wrote. Hi, Daniel. I've been trying to follow the advice you gave in Ask Daniel 17. And would like to share with you that some of the quote-unquote adventures I'm going through. First of all, thanks for all the information. I had a pretty good week, and a few times I actually managed to welcome anxiety when it happened during sudden sleep awareness. That's when it really went away or didn't happen at all. I thought I'm building good sleep confidence and was going to share my success story with you until something changed a couple of days ago. For some reason, or for no reason, I couldn't fall asleep, not because I was anxious about not sleeping, because I was afraid to fall asleep. What? Why? She says, I'm not sure how, but some new unknown fear got into my head, and I'm trying to be optimistic and curious about what's going on. Even though I'm freaking out, I try not to react, but honestly, still have no clue how to not get frustrated over something like this. To be honest, I was still very doubtful of my sleep confidence when it happened, and now I'm very confused. Would appreciate any advice on this matter. Thank you. And before we look at that, there was another kind of quick reply to that. I just said I would reply on Monday, and Lena said, thank you, I'm looking forward to it. I want to add something to my letter before you make a video. You mentioned that sleep confidence is important, and to be honest, every success I had did not give me confidence at all. There's always this thought in the back of my mind, what if I don't sleep? And that's why I still end up monitoring my sleep when drifting off. It's like an obsession that makes everything so complicated. How to trust these good nights I had, and what would you suggest doing when sleep monitoring starts happening as soon as I go to bed? All right, totally. We'll go over these 2 emails here. So first of all, by the way, Lena and everybody else that submitted questions, I'm super, super grateful for these. A lot of these questions are the same questions that many others have. So when I get to answer questions here, I'm not only hopefully helping you, Lena, but a lot of people that have the similar problems. So I want to say this. You say, Lena, that you try to kind of welcome anxiety And that's when it really went away. It didn't happen at all. I thought I was building sleep confidence, and I thought I was going to share a success story until something changed a couple of days ago. And it says here also, I had a pretty good week, and that, that is big. That is huge. I would That's kind of the headline here, that things there was you were nearly going to share a success story. You had a pretty good week. Things were going well for you. That's really big. That's really, we should be spending like 30 minutes just to talk about. We should almost obsess about that things were getting better. That's like affirmation, affirmation, affirmation. You can sleep. Nothing's wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your sleep system. You can sleep. That is what we should be talking about, because that's so important. But we have to, like, we can't only do that, because that in itself is not all it takes. But I really want to stress how, like, finding all the tiniest positive and making it a huge deal is so important. In fact, I believe that when coaching somebody, I really think it's important, and I'm talking kind of to myself now, but I think this is helpful for you to hear, is when I coach somebody, I'm going to make it a point to say, I want to hear from you when you're doing good. 100%. Every time you have the littlest, slightest positive to report, I want to hear that. And of course, I also want to hear when you have questions and you're not doing well. But reporting when you're doing good, so important, so important. And by the way, anyone who hears this out there, if you're having a good day, please let me know. That's really good for you and for me and for everyone that hears that. So that's super important. Okay, now that said, for some reason, or for no reason, I couldn't fall asleep. Not because I was anxious about not sleeping, because I was afraid to fall asleep. What? Why? Okay, so the question for Lena is, like, I wasn't worried about not sleeping, but was afraid to fall asleep. Well, why is that? Well, could it be this sudden awareness says you're kind of afraid to fall asleep because you know you're going to have that sudden awareness, or is your brain kind of playing a trick on you, kind of like you're doing this thing where you're no longer like you're like, I'm not going to look at sleep insomnia as a threat. Then your brain kind of like is kind of sneaky, and it makes you instead be afraid of falling asleep. I don't know, but the point here is that the searching for the truth is not helpful, because there is no way to find out why you're suddenly afraid to fall asleep. And the longer we think about that, the more kind of dwelling, like pondering, thinking, like ruminating, searching, like, the longer, the more attention we're giving to insomnia, the more we stay there, instead of like kind of moving forward. We're stuck in this process of trying to figure out why this is happening. And with insomnia, attention is the oxygen. Like, that's what it feeds off. It's what it loves. Without attention, it cannot survive. So the best thing to do is, like I usually say here, like, it's like those existential questions, like, what's the purpose of life? Like, why is the universe so big? We can never get to the answer. There is no absolute truth out there. So the best strategy is to kind of abandon the search and accept that I'm never going to know or understand how big the universe is, but I can live a great life even without that. So the best thing to do, I think, not trying to figure it out. I'm not sure how, but some new unknown fear got into my head. And I try to not react, but honestly have no clue how to not get frustrated or something like that. So the question is, like, something kind of new, odd happens. How do I not get frustrated over that? Well, I think this is a good example of when you're kind of avoiding a negative. So let's say somebody has, for some odd reason, started to become a little bit sad, and that person is like, I don't want to be sad. I have to figure out why I'm sad. And then they start thinking about it. It's probably this. And in the process, they're giving that sadness more attention. It kind of grows. And then they're like, I'm going to try this to become more sad. Then it becomes even more like that sadness just drowns out every other, emotion on the spectrum. It becomes a huge deal. And now the question is, like, how do I not get frustrated? Well, it's same thing there. You're frustrated for something that it's expected to be frustrated. But then you're like, how do I become less frustrated? Well, guess what? Anything you do to become less frustrated is kind of like you're trying to escape frustration. And the more you try to escape frustration, the bigger a problem it becomes. Whenever we try to avoid a negative, like insomnia, like fear, like anxiety, like depression, like frustration, whenever we try to avoid that, whenever we try to do things to become less frustrated, less anxious, less scared, we're actually just staying there. We're making it a bigger problem. So I would say the key there is like, frustration is normal. There's nothing wrong with frustration. So the key is not to try to escape the frustration, but go towards the light. Do things that are bring sparking joy, things that you love, that you enjoy, that has nothing to do with sleep. That could be whale watching, or synchronized diving, or taking up golfing, or baking. I don't know what it is. Like whatever is like, that's fun. I would like to do that. Just plunge there, just go there, just enjoy that. And it's just like when you do that, when you go towards the light, that light, the lightness, lightness, the brightness, the whatever makes you happy, that starts to take a bigger place. Now it drowns out the other things. I think that's the key there. And then, to be honest, I was still very doubtful of my sleep confidence. Well, sleep confidence takes a while for that to really become solid. So I wouldn't expect that for someone that I treat in clinic, let's say, or someone that I've coached over my app that is not up there right now, but it will be up there at some point soon. I typically tend to kind of graduate people when I see that they have enough sleep confidence to be on the right path, but I know that that's going to grow and grow and grow. So the key is not to expect, to have solid sleep confidence after 2 weeks or 4 weeks, maybe even, but, typically maybe 6 weeks or something like that. After that, you're like, okay, now I have sleep confidence and enough sleep confidence so that I can kind of keep going forward and let it grow. So that's kind of my comment on that one. And then going to the second part of the second email here. You mentioned that sleep confidence is so important. To be honest, every success I had did not give me confidence at all. But I think that it might just be time. It takes a long time to grow that sleep confidence. It takes a long time for your brain to realize sleeplessness is not a threat. It's kind of like you have to train your brain to not fear it, etc. It takes time. There's always this thought in my mind: what if I don't sleep? And then I end up monitoring my sleep and drifting out, etc. It's like an obsession, and I want to say same thing as I said before, that if you focus on like, how can I stop obsessing, then you are going to be obsessing more. If you shift completely away from that and just like, what can I do to just enjoy and be happy, then you're going towards the light, and then that just drowns out the thoughts about obsessing, etc. And the sleep, like the what if, well, I'd say the same thing. That just comes with time. If you're doing kind of the basic things I always talk about here, get up early, maybe let's say 6 a.m. Don't go to bed too early. Spend maybe 7 hours in bed. Get up at 6. Don't go to bed before 11. And apart from that, just try to go towards the light, enjoy life, etc. Then with time, that sleep confidence grows, and you may have had several nights where you didn't sleep much at all, but you still went on to have a good day. You still went on to enjoy your life and do things you enjoy. Well, guess what? Then what if you don't sleep? Then you're like, I've had nights where I didn't sleep at all and had a great day after that. So if I don't sleep, well, nothing bad happens. I just feel tired. That is the path towards, not having sleep anxiety, really. How to trust these good nights I had, and what do you suggest when sleep monitoring starts happening as soon as I go to bed? Well, I want to say this, that first of all, how to trust these good nights. I think affirmations are great. Every time you have a good night, make it a huge deal. I think that's fantastic. And if someone goes to bed, if it's like you go to bed, Lena, and you immediately kind of start monitoring sleep, you go to bed and like, what's going to happen? How long have I been here? What am I feeling? Am I going to sleep, etc. Then, you are not ready to sleep at that point. So I think you have to do something that shifts focus, and that could be, you could try the most simple thing, which is actually kind of just mentally taking a journey somewhere, like imagining a a pleasant memory, a pleasant place, or something nice. And if that comes easy to you, you can just stay in bed. You're probably gonna fall asleep. If not, then you gotta pick up a book or listen to a podcast, and you can do that in bed. Watch some Netflix, or you could leave the bed and do somewhere else. But important thing there is always it has to be a book that you enjoy, a podcast that you look forward to. Because if you read something boring, hoping that it'll kind of make you sleep, then that's a sleep effort. You're kind of trying to make yourself sleep, which always produces the opposite. So that's really important there. So Lena, I by the way, since we are talking about an email from Lena, I want to say that what the comment from Alex here just a few 30 minutes, an hour ago or so, I think that was a good comment from Alex about how like not doing anything is not like actively trying not to do something. When you fall asleep and you have this kind of sudden sleep awareness, if you're actively like, I'm not going to do anything, I'm not going to do anything, that's not the thing to do. It's kind of like complete or lack of effort, which is hard. But if you try to just to like observe, like if I had a sudden awareness, I was about to fall asleep, and try as much as possible to be like, just observe that happened and not do anything really. That is the key to that. All right. So Lena, stay in touch, and you can do this. You can totally do this, and let us know how things go. So that way. That said, we have an email here from Jamie, and this came in 3 days ago. So let's read this. My issue with insomnia is that it is acute, not chronic, and comes up every 5 years when I'm going through through an extremely stressful period of life. It will head full force. I also have panic disorder, but it's pretty well under control. Normally, I'm a pretty good sleeper. Fall asleep quick and wake up maybe 1 to 2 times a night, but go back to sleep easily. When I do get insomnia, I feel like my anxiety brain takes over and I'm in some sort of fight or flight response that can last for days or weeks. Some nights I do not sleep at all or only for a few hours. My biggest hurdle is when these really bad nights hit, and I tend to be, number one, fearful that it won't end. Number two, grab a pill to break the cycle and give myself a regular night's sleep. Number three, blame myself for creating this problem in my head. I always come out of it and go back to normal, but I'm going through a spell now, and I'm also dealing with pregnancy hormones driving me nuts on top of it. Any advice? And there was another email, but that was just that. I want to say this, that first of all, I'm very happy to hear that you haven't had chronic insomnia. And in this acute insomnia comes up about every 5 years, so when I'm going through something extremely stressful. So first of all, that's great. I'm super happy that generally speaking, you're sleeping pretty good. That should really make you have good sleep confidence. Like there's nothing wrong with you. You know that there's nothing wrong with your sleep system or anything like that. So that's really, really good. Now, second thing I think is important here is that acute insomnia, when something stressful happens and we sleep very little, is completely normal. If somebody lost their job and went home and said, I lost my job today, and then slept great, that would be really odd. It's a completely normal reaction. So I think, for example, if you know something stressful is coming up and you're like, I'm going to have insomnia now again, well, I think it's really important not to try to prevent that, not trying to be like, I know I'm not going to sleep well, therefore I'm going to do all these things to prevent myself from having insomnia. But those are sleep efforts. Like whenever the more we try to sleep, the less sleep we get. And the more you try to prevent insomnia from happening, the worse it's going to get. So it's important to kind of accept that you are going to have insomnia when something stressful happens. And that can seem like discouraging, like, okay, what do I do with that information? It is actually really helpful and empowering, because if somebody doesn't realize that and somebody really tries to be like, okay, I'm going to be anxious, something stressful is coming up, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and that so I can sleep better, that person is going to have more trouble sleeping, because the more they're going to try to make themselves sleep, the longer their problem is going to stay. So although it sounds discouraging at first that you can't prevent it or do anything to, for it not to happen, that is empowering. It is really, really important. So that's kind of number two. That acute insomnia is normal, and it has always, you've always gone back to sleeping well in the past. So where's the evidence that something would change? As long as you don't react to it, things will get back on track. And we'll talk more about that in a second. When I get insomnia, I feel like my anxiety brain takes over, and I'm in sort of fight or flight response. And that's exactly what's happening. When insomnia strikes, it is because your brain, well, it could be that your brain is identifying something else as a threat. Like, it could be that, that person who lost their job, it's like, I lost my job, now I have to find a new one, this is going to happen. That anxiety can drive insomnia. Or it can be that, your brain identifies sleeplessness as a threat, and like the fear of that drives insomnia. But again, it's completely well worded. It is a fight or flight response, and it can last for days to weeks. Some nights I do not sleep at all, or only a few hours. That makes you feel very tired and groggy and foggy, etc. Totally hear that. But again, acute anxiety is a normal reaction. Now let's go to these numbers here. My biggest hurdle is I'm fearful it won't end. I grab a pill and I blame myself. Well, I want to hear. I think to be honest with you, I think the most important thing is this: that knowing that those that have chronic insomnia because of the following. So people that have chronic insomnia that lasts for like months, years, decades, it started as acute insomnia. It started just like these episodes that you're having, Jamie. It started as acute insomnia. But then what happened with those people that have chronic insomnia is that they really honed in on sleeplessness as a threat. They went on to, try weighted blankets, try melatonin, try medications, try to stop drinking coffee, try to stop going out at night, try to spend more time in bed, try to get sleep whenever they can. They really get kind of desperately went to get more sleep. How can I do this? So I think the really most important thing is when you have acute insomnia is to go, it is normal for me to have acute insomnia. It is completely normal. I'm not going to try to escape it or fight it. I'm just going to live my life as much as I can without letting this derail me. I'm going to get up same time every morning. I'm going to go to work or take care of my kids or do the things I need to do. Even better, I'm going to enjoy, even after having slept almost nothing, I'm going to find those reserves within me and just do things that I like to do. And if you just do that, if you don't react, don't change anything, don't manipulate, and etc., you're going to be back on track much sooner than you thought you would. And blame yourself. Yeah, I hear that a lot of people do that. Like, why am I doing this to myself? But again, deploy self-love. It's not, you aren't doing this on purpose. It is very common to have those type of feelings, but just deploy self-love, self-empathy, and I think you'll do really well, Jamie. I think you'll do really well. Just stay in touch. Let us know how you do, and hang in there. Yeah, totally. Okay, very well. So those were actually 2 emails from that one, and we have one more email before we get to some other channels. And this is from Ernest. Ernest, thanks so much for staying in touch. And I said to Ernest here that I really appreciate this last email because it's a little bit of a different question, and that's always good with some variety. So where is it? Can't be that one. No, it's this one. Okay. Hey, Daniel, would you mind analyzing the study about sleep and shrunken brain association? Kind of freaking out, to be honest. So what Ernest asked about that was a study that basically went like this. So some researchers had taken 149 or 47, I think it was 149 people, and adults. And then they had asked them to do this kind of questionnaire, asking about their sleep quality. And then they had taken a baseline MRI of their brain. And then 3.5 years later, they had taken another MRI of their brain. And they tried to see if their sleep quality predicted their brain size. Okay. I'm sorry I'm laughing here, but I'm like, why would somebody want to do that study? Like, what is the purpose of doing that? And this is kind of why, you know, research is super important, science is super important, but a lot of people like in the sleep world, people like myself who are here in the trenches, like trying to help people every day, often are kind of frustrated with people in the academic side of sleep because we're like, give us something that's helpful. Give us something that we can use to help people sleep better. Why are you looking into people's brain sizes? Like, how's that gonna make the world better? So sorry for venting there, but that's a lot of frustration that us like that are actually out here like trying to help people sleep. We don't feel that we get that much support often from the research world. So just venting a little bit there. But now that said, so that was the study, okay? And then the researchers say that after doing that second MRI, they saw that people that had more trouble sleeping, a part of their brain, like some part of the frontal cortex, seemed to have shrunk more than in those that did not have trouble sleeping. And that was kind of the conclusion, but other parts of the brain didn't shrink as much. So I have so many problems with this. First is like intention. Like, why do you do this study? Like, it doesn't mean who's it going to help? But anyway, secondly, how do you know that there was this kind of brain shrinkage, and how do you evaluate that? Did the person, like, it's not like you can take an MRI and just hit a button and say like, check the brain size. No, you have to go in and like measure it, and by the way, if you see an MRI, there's so many slices, right? So how do you know that you're on the same slice in all these synchronized subjects when you measure brain sizes? And how do you know that when you put those little markers in to see how big something is, how do you know that you're doing that exact same way in all 149 of them, right? And are you blinded? Is the person does he know that this is one of the insomnia subjects or this is not an insomnia subject? How do you know that? How do you even compare? I've done similar type of research myself many years ago, and I know that, you can stretch it this way, stretch it that way. Okay, so that's a big problem. How do you know that it's true? And then another problem, publication bias, huge problem. Like, who would publish a study? Who would publish a study where you said, we checked the MRI, brain size here, we checked it 4 years later, and there was no difference. Nobody would publish that study. So there is a huge bias towards finding something. Wouldn't surprise me at all if these people had like checked every single part of their brain just to find something that they could publish, and they happen to find this. That's my second problem with this one. Third problem is, what's the clinical impact and significance of this? Maybe it's good that your brain shrinks. Who knows? I mean, that sounds crazy, but is it really great to have a big brain? Isn't it better to have like a well-functioning brain? How did those people feel? Like, did it have any functional impact? Like, that's another big problem. And then, so I think I felt those more. So those are kind of like, I don't think this tells you anything. I don't think it tells you really anything about anything. It's completely pointless in my opinion. But then we go to the second part of this, and that's where like, why? Okay, someone who has no trouble sleeping whatsoever, their sleep confidence is like 100%. They're sleeping great every single night. If they read up on, read a study like this, they go like, oh, this is interesting. Okay, read the next thing. No problem. But if you have ever had some trouble sleeping and your sleep confidence is not quite there, you're like, you're still worried about your sleep to some extent, then maybe it's not the best idea to read these type of articles. Oftentimes, when I was new to the channel here and new to insomnia, it almost like I couldn't grasp it. It's like, why do so many people that have trouble sleeping read so much about insomnia when they know that it must be so triggering? And then I had this realization that it's part of what's called threat monitoring. It's part of threat monitoring. What's happening is that, again, that part of your brain that's trying to keep you safe has identified sleeplessness as a threat, and it's trying to understand insomnia. It's trying to figure it out, trying to like get a grip of it, be prepared. And that threat monitoring is fantastic if you have a physical threat. If you're gonna go bear hunting, or let's say you're going bear hunting, then it makes sense for you to read up on bears' behaviors. They're your threat. So if you learn how they move, how you settle, yeah. Hey, Lena, thanks for chiming in. You're right. Lena saying like this brain shrinking thing made me laugh so hard. Yeah. Why would somebody do that anyway? So back to the bear here. If you're facing a bear, it makes total sense to read up on the bear, understand the bear, do some threat monitoring to keep you safe. But when the threat is like, no, Ernest, I love I love these questions, and it brings so much. It brings another dimension to have kind of a different type of question here. But again, I think this is important for everyone here, that the reason that you may feel that you feel like you can't resist reading up on insomnia, reading up on sleep, when you have had trouble sleeping, it is because it's part of that threat monitoring system. Like your brain is trying to keep you safe by reading up, by being prepared, by checking things like that. So that's why. But the same thing applies. It's really best to, if your sleep confidence is not like solid 1000%, then try not to read up, try not to Google or go to these Facebook groups or something like that. And I guess final thing I want to add, something I say a lot, but I think it's always worth mentioning, is, going back to the study, who knows what's happening to people's brains, right? We don't know. It's really impossible to find out without some kind of like huge, like randomized study that nobody is ever going to do. So it's again back to the existential questions. When you can't find that, it's often not. Don't look for the truth. Look for the belief that's going to serve you the best. And we can't find like the truth, just abandon the search is really the best thing to do. And by the way, Ernest, I won't read that here, but I know Ernest shared that he'd been trying to like focus on positives and enjoying life, etc. That is the path. That is the way. That is super, super good. Super, super. And Ernest, I'm super happy to review this, and I'm laughing now because in my mind I was going to say, if you have another article you want me to review, just send it to me. But then I realized that's, I think the best thing to do is just not read them. I think that's the best thing to do. So that said, let's shift gear here and go to Instagram. And actually before that, where is that? Just so I have it. Oh, there it is. Perfect. Before that, I realized there was another comment that I wanted to talk about, which came from Joshua Lopez. There it is. Joshua Lopez. And I said I would reply today. So Joshua said the following. It's kind of a short comment on Ask Daniel number 20 from 3 days ago. I've had insomnia for 7 months. My insomnia is not that bad. I get 4 to 6 hours of sleep, but this week my insomnia has come back. I barely slept this week. Does that mean my insomnia is getting worse, or is it normal to run into sleepless nights? So, very good question. I think, short answer to this is that, insomnia really just means that it's just completely descriptive. Insomnia means that somebody's struggling with sleep. It takes like, it's an effort to fall asleep. I have to kind of put in work to I can't fall asleep easily. I'm not, I'm waking up a lot. Like it's subjective like that. So when you are having even more of that, when you're having a stretch of really sleepless nights, you're sleeping really struggling a lot, well, you can say that insomnia is getting worse, true. But the point here is that it can appear as insomnia like has a life of its own. It's just doing its thing, and like now it's worse, now it's better. I don't understand why. And that's not the case, not at all. Insomnia is, again, it's just like your brain's attempt to save you from sleeplessness. It's like your brain going like, you're not sleeping well, putting in high alert, hyperarousal. I can't sleep. What's going on? I have to figure it out. That's when insomnia gets worse. So insomnia gets worse when you are really trying to like not have sleeplessness, when you're really hyper alert like that. So yes, you could say that your insomnia has gotten worse, but it's not like it did that by itself. It's not like it just did that. It's because for some reason you became like really like the last few nights there, you became really worried about not sleeping much, and that's why the insomnia was worse. So that said, I want to say that I'm happy that your insomnia hasn't been that bad. I think you say I get 4 to 6 hours of sleep. my spidey senses immediately when I hear that go off and say like, you know, I'm happy it's not that bad, but try not to monitor how much you sleep. Like really try to stay away from knowing how many hours you slept. Just try to be like, how did I feel today? Was it difficult for me? If you want to track anything, it's like track how you feel. How refreshed do you feel? How active was I today? How was my day? How much did I struggle to sleep, etc. Don't track how many hours and minutes you slept. That leads to self-monitoring, more worrying, more kind of checking, more attention, etc. So that's that. And overall, I think you know, if you had said, Joshua, that I hardly ever have trouble sleeping, then I would have said that's fantastic and just leave this channel. Don't ever think about sleep again and just like enjoy your life. But I've had insomnia for 7 months. I think maybe it is worthwhile for you to kind of stay on this channel, learn a little more, spend a little bit less time in bed, and work towards like not having any insomnia at all. I think that might be worthwhile. So anyway, Joshua, if you have more questions, please stay in touch and let me know. So that said, we have a question here, live question here from Ace Tim. Do you think OCD can play a role in paradoxical insomnia? Okay, I want to say the following, that first of all, paradoxical insomnia is when somebody sleeps quite a bit more than they perceive sleeping. So it's typically like somebody estimates sleeping 3 hours, but in reality they sleep 5, something like that. There's quite a big difference. And it's important to note that I sometimes use the word paradoxical insomnia, but it's really no different from any other type of insomnia. All insomnia is driven by hyperarousal, when your brain is kind of in this heightened hyper alert state and you're kind of threat monitoring, etc. And basically everyone with insomnia has some degree of paradoxical insomnia. Almost everyone with insomnia underestimates how much they sleep, and people that don't have trouble sleeping overestimate their sleep. So paradoxical insomnia is just like when that misperception has become pretty significant. So it's nothing strange or unusual with paradoxical. It is really just a variation of general insomnia. So that's important to always point out. Now, OCD, I think definitely if you have this tendency towards being kind of like pay a lot of attention to something, obsess about something, being a perfectionist, that kind of underlying traits, if you will, or that predisposition, makes it more likely for you to have trouble sleeping. That is true, because if you ask somebody that sleeps really well what they do to sleep, they'll be like, I don't know, nothing. Like they're the type of people that just don't pay attention to many things. They're kind of very easygoing, or blah blah blah. But if you have a tendency to pay attention to things, you can really focus on things for a long period of time like that, then you're more likely to have any type of insomnia, including paradoxical insomnia. So I think if you have OCD, the tendency towards OCD, you're more likely to have trouble sleeping in general, including paradoxical insomnia. But I don't think there's any specific like OCD and paradoxical insomnia, like a specific thing there. But yeah, so I hope that was helpful to you, Ace Tim. And with that said, let's jump into this message from Krissy that came in on via Instagram. And she said, and so Krissy, I've been in touch with for quite a long time, and she's kind of waiting for the relaunch of my app, Bedtime with a Y, that is down, but it will be up at some point pretty soon. And she said, and she's kind of waiting for that. And she said, I'm going through a very poor period of sleep, difficulty eating, functioning. I was kept overnight for observation in the hospital, major issues ruled out. I really want to stop using sleep meds, come up with a more proactive plan to address this. And I said, I felt there was another message here, but maybe not. But anyway, what I wanted to say was that, oh yeah, no, that was the one I wanted to comment on. So I want to say the following, that first of all, I'm sorry this has been happening, and I believe that bedtime, when it comes up, it's going to be Ivan. I saw that live question. I'm going to answer it in a second. Back to Krissy. I want to say this is what I want to say, was that when you have trouble sleeping, that's really when you're in a really kind of stretch of poor sleep, like things are unusually difficult, then strange as it seems, that is the time actually to not do anything, really not try to do anything. If you're in that kind of desperate situation, anything you do will just highlight that you're in a desperate situation and kind of make it worse. Like if you're kind of really desperate, you read a book, you're like, this is it, no, this is it. You're like frantically searching for the thing. It's really hard to start working when you're in kind of a desperate situation. The best thing to do when things are really, really desperate is like really try to resist the urge to like start a therapy, then start a medication, then start anything, and kind of just wait it out. And when things are more kind of, okay, now these are like baseline, these are more like baseline, that's the time to look. And she asked also about Martin Reed too, insomniacoach.com, Martin Reed, about him. And I said, he's great, but I think the best time to start anything, CBTI, a sleep coaching app, help like that, is when you're more in your baseline. So I think that's a really important thing to comment on. All right. So Krissy, stay in touch. Ivan says, hey, why does sleep restriction and stimulus control therapy work from a physiological perspective? I've seen a video where you said it builds sleep confidence, but I was really curious about the physiological perspective. Yeah, that's a great question. Great question. Let's go over some basic sleep physiology here. We often get the sense that sleep is kind of complex and complicated. We got to get all these things right to sleep well. Not at all. Sleep is very, very simple. There's a gas and a break, okay? So the gas is our sleep drive. That's our body's need and want. Let's call it need. The body's need to sleep. And the only thing that kind of really makes your body need sleep is wakefulness. The longer you stay awake, the more sleepy you become, the more sleep drive you have. That's the gas in our system. Then we have the break in our system. That's hyperarousal. That's worry, preoccupation, anxiety, or positive things like excitement. Anything that kind of heightens our state of alertness is the break. So we have the gas, sleep drive. We have the break, hyperarousal. Gas, break, gas, break. Now, if you're in this position, like you have a strong gas, you're really sleepy, you're not preoccupied or worried at all, guess what? You're going to sleep amazing. That's where you want to be. Okay? Now, you got this. You got a strong break, no gas, not going to sleep at all. Of course not. If you have no gas, no break, you're not going to sleep either. If you have this, that's kind of classic insomnia. You are sleepy to some degree, but you also have this brake pedal going. You kind of gas and brake at the same time. This is where you have this kind of like fitful sleep, takes a long time to fall asleep, you sleep a little, etc., etc. Classic insomnia situation here. So so answer your question here. Why does sleep restriction work? Sleep restriction works by, when you get up early and you spend a lot of time awake during the day and you go to bed later, guess what? You're gassing up. You're increasing the gas. You have more sleep drive that can override the break and make you sleep. And how does that lead to sleep confidence? Well, it's just simply like when you override the break and you actually start sleeping more, you're like, okay, this is working. I can sleep. There's no problem. I have sleep confidence. That's how that works. Like super important. How does stimulus control therapy work from a physiological perspective? So let's go back to this gas and break, and let's say you're pretty sleepy and you're feeling sleepy, you're feeling good, but you've had so much trouble sleeping in your bed over the last 6 months or year or 2 years that you have this conditioned response. As soon as your head hits the pillow, it associates the bed with not sleeping. So you're feeling pretty sleepy, but as soon as you go to bed, ding, that hyperarousal kicks in. And now you have trouble sleeping. So stimulus control is when you kind of, in a nutshell, it's like when you leave the bed, when you're frustrated in bed, you can't sleep, etc., to reassociate the bed with sleep, so that when you go to bed, you're sleepy, you go to bed, and you don't have hyperarousal because you're now associating the bed with sleep and you can't sleep. So that's, in a nutshell, from a physiological perspective, how those two techniques work. So Ivan, I hope that was helpful to you. And with that said, we'll move over here to the last question for today, unless they're live questions, of course, which is from Misha. And this was 16 hours ago. She said this, and this is on Twitter. Daniel, On days one can't sleep, even if you're not anxious, you're sleepy and absolutely nothing is wrong. Why does this happen? Why doesn't the mind let us sleep? If it's hyperarousal, how do we beat it? So I want to say this, that if you are going to bed and you feel pretty sleepy, but you're just not falling asleep and you don't know why, it is probably hyperarousal. Like, going back to what we just talked about, if you have a strong gas, no hyperarousal at all, you are going to sleep. It's really inevitable. It's inevitable. But if you even have, you can have this hyperarousal, sneaky hyperarousal, even if you don't feel anxious, some part of your brain is alert. It's like, am I going to sleep? Am I not going to sleep? What if I don't sleep? That those kind of thoughts can be back there in your mind without you noticing them, and it keeps you from sleeping well. So I think it's hyperarousal. Now, the question is, how do I beat it? How do I beat hyperarousal? And this is what, a classic question. And the key insight there is that you can't beat it. You can't beat it. You can't fight it. You can't overcome it. You can't crush it, anything like that. Anything you do with the direct intent to kind of reduce hyperarousal will give you more of it. Because when you're trying to like meditate to have less hyperarousal, then as soon as you start meditating, you're like, okay, I hope this works. I hope my hyperarousal goes away. How long do I have to do this? How do I feel like now? Self-monitoring, more worry. You're bringing more attention to the problem. It doesn't work. It has to be abandoning the fight, letting go of hyperarousal, not trying to escape hyperarousal, but shift gears completely, being like, I'm going to do things that I enjoy, that take my mind completely away from this, and that is the path, that is the way, that's the way. Ivan has another question. I'm gonna get to it in a second, Ivan, just so I don't miss this. I'm just gonna see if there's anything more from Misha. She says, I think I said something to this effect in the text, and then she said, it's just that when one feels like they can't sleep or sleep isn't coming, we start thinking of all the sleeplessness and how it will hurt you. I have fibromyalgia, I have a long commute, so the fear is aggravated by pain and exhaustion. Yeah, totally. So I think that the key to this one is to find evidence that even when you sleep little, you can have an okay commute. Your fibromyalgia can be manageable, etc. And it could be as little as finding that one time 5 weeks ago when you slept really little and you had a pretty good day. That is proof that not everything hinges upon sleep. When you put sleep on a pedestal, which, I'm not saying that you did this, Misha, but a lot of people go into a place where they're like, if I just slept well, my skin would radiate. I would be more happy. I would be more productive at work. Everything would be better. Sleep is on a pedestal. It's like so important to get that sleep that it becomes impossible. The pressure to get it becomes, you can't get it. It's so precious, that sleep, so it becomes so hard to get it. And once you start working towards seeing that, I can have a lot of fibromyalgia issues even if I sleep good. I can have little fibromyalgia even sometimes when I don't sleep that well. When you see that not everything hinges on sleep, many other things affect it, and you can do okay even after sleeping very little. That's when the magic happens. That's when you're worrying less about sleeping little, your hyperarousal goes down, etc. I think that's super important. All right, Ivan, I'm so excited you're asking these questions. It's so fun being like truly live here, interacting with somebody that's tuning in. That's awesome. Now, thanks for the response. Ivan says, I was just wondering, how long do I have to practice sleep resilience to see it working? I think building a realistic expectation is important. So does it take like 2 months? Good question. Very good question. And here is the thing. To give you something practical, I want to say that for most people do within the first 2 to 3 weeks see a positive. And it could be as little as like one night a week, day 8, you're like, oh, I fell asleep much easier than I used to that time. And that may not seem like a big deal, but it is. That's the magic moment. That's when you're like, this is working. There's nothing wrong with me, etc. So most people do actually start seeing start seeing this as work maybe week 3, maybe week 2, something like that. But now that said, I want to say it is super important not to approach sleep restriction or whatever you call it, bedtime restriction or CBTI, not to approach it as a sleep effort. Don't let it become a sleep effort. Meaning, when you do anything to kind of make yourself sleep, it creates problems. Like if you take melatonin and you're like, let's see what's happening. Like, is this going to make me sleep? It's maybe, maybe not. Like that whole, the whole process of trying to see if something makes you sleep or not creates a lot of anxiety and insomnia. Now, that can happen even with sleep restriction. If a lot of people have, asked me like, I've done this for 4 weeks and it's not working, then I'm like, okay, we have a problem here. You're approaching sleep restriction as a sleep effort. You're doing it to produce sleep. You're looking to see how much sleep you're going to get by doing this. And when you approach it like that, it is really tricky. So the best thing to do is set it and forget it. It's like you decide, I'm going to get up at 6, I'm going to go to bed at 11, and I'm not going to have any expectations. Or rather, this one is good. I'm going to expect at some point in the not so far future, I'm going to sleep amazing. That's a good expectation. You should expect that. But on a night-to-night basis, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, etc., no expectations whatsoever. And if it takes a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we don't know. It's the more you want. Here's another one. The more you wonder how long it's going to take, the longer it will take, because again, you're kind of paying attention, you're monitoring, you're thinking about it. So if you can set a schedule of spending, let's say, 6 hours in bed or 6.5 or something like that, and apart from that, go towards the light, do things you enjoy, don't forget about sleep, etc. And that is the path. That is, if you can do that, you're on a guaranteed path towards great sleep. And by the way, I said, if you can do that, of course you can. Everyone can do that. You can do it. Just, it's a bumpy road in the beginning. You may need some kind of guidance and answer some more questions here, et cetera, et cetera. But of course you can do it. Absolutely, 100%. So that said, I have this creepy feeling that I forgot something, but we answered the comments. And I think we covered everything. So if anyone, if I forgot to answer an email or a question or something like that, then please send me an email or leave a comment here. And with that said, I'll be back here tomorrow. And please keep the questions coming. That's super, super helpful. Thanks so much for tuning in, and see you soon.